Hello, trumpet players. This is the first video in our new Trumpet Culture video series. This is the introduction, and in this video, we're going to be talking about culture and how it relates to playing the trumpet. I think this is one of those topics that people get kind of bored with, but they wouldn't be if they just stopped for a second to think about what I'm saying. And I think the people who tend to get bored with it are those who are guilty of what I call being an academic musician. When I talk about academic musicians, I'm not necessarily talking about people who are part of academia. I'm talking about people who have separated their music from the culture. They want their efforts as musicians to exist only in their own little world and not to be connected to the culture at all. And I call that an academic musician because really, the value of that kind of music, there is none. There is no value in music outside of the culture. So we're going to talk a little bit in this video about my interpretation about what culture is and how that relates to the trumpet, and more specifically how it relates to your progress as a trumpet player. Okay? What is culture? Now, I've taken sociology courses, and after I finished my sociology course, I continued to read more about sociology, and that branched off into other fields, and I'm not an expert. And I do have a terrible habit of using terms my own way. So let me explain to you real quick how I see culture. Because traditionally we say the culture is the food and the language and the customs and stuff like that. And that, while that's true, because like even in trumpet culture, not even talking about jazz culture or classical culture, we do have a subculture that is a trumpet culture. Even in trumpet culture, we've got our own language. Maybe not our own food, I haven't thought about that one yet. But we definitely have our own language and we definitely have our own customs. But I think it's so much more than that. When you look at what culture is the identity of a group of people, right? So I like to say that culture is a complex, living organism. And in fact, I go as far as to say that, you know, as complex as our bodies are, and intricate, and I mean, what a miraculous machine God built for us, right? To house our spirits in, so to speak. I believe that the culture is an organism that's even more complicated, more complex, because it's a organism that it consists of these organisms, our bodies, our minds, our psyches. A culture is this organism of interaction, just like how our cells can communicate with each other, just like one part of our body can communicate to the other part of our body, or more importantly, react to a different part of our body. The same thing is true with culture. if you push this in this direction, something is going to happen over here. And if you push it in that direction, something's going to happen over there. That's why one of the reasons why I was so opposed to the lockdowns from the very beginning. My understanding of the culture and how culture works, I saw how destructive that could be. I even wrote down somewhere, I never published it anywhere, but I remember writing that the way I saw this, society and culture and society, there you can have many cultures within a single society, but they are connected, right? If you have a society, if you make that connection to where it's a living organism, and you want to just put a tourniquet on the arm and leave that tourniquet there for 18 months, that tourniquet can actually kill the body. Because by this, we know that about how the human body works. If you put a tourniquet here, this arm will die. But in the end, the tourniquet will not be strong enough to keep the germs from this dead flesh from going into the rest of your body. That's the analogy I had, the metaphor I had when I was first thinking through these lockdowns. You're going to kill all of us this way. That's what my thought was. And as a matter of fact, the WHO came out and begged people, don't use lockdowns except for as a last alternative, right? And I could see philosophically why that was, long before they ever announced that. And now the way culture works, we have cultures, and then we have subcultures, and then we can have subcultures. Like I said earlier, we have a trumpet culture. And that trumpet culture can be a subculture of either the classical subculture or the jazz subculture, and then you can have the overall music subculture. Now, I will stress that classical music and jazz music, because they are art music, don't work the way a lot of other musics work, right? Culturally speaking, if you hear, let's say, for example, rap, and maybe this will change someday for rap, but rap is not a culture of itself. Rap is the culture of a people. Does that make sense? Rap is a music that belongs to a culture that belongs to a group of people. Art music doesn't work that way. The culture of art musicians is sort of like the culture of plumbers, or the culture of doctors, or the culture, those doctors and those plumbers might be part of a bigger culture. Like here, I live in Houston, I'm part of the Houston culture. My music is not necessarily part of that Houston culture because it is academic. It's art, I call it art music, right? So art music would include jazz, classical, and other kinds of experimental music and stuff like that. Mostly jazz and classical music. And the difference between art music and pop music, or you can call it folk music, is that art music is being, as the culture, so we have in our culture music that comes from the culture, like what we said about rap. Same thing is true for country western. Same thing is true for pop music. So we have this major culture over here, and that music is an outpouring of that culture. What happens with art music is they take something normally from the past that was, in most cases, part of the dominant culture. But it's become less of that because it was studied separately. Now, I know that almost blows my whole thing out of the water because I'm saying we don't want to be academic. But it was academic in the beginning, it's no longer academic now. Yes, I know I'm treading on thin ground here, but that's all right. I just want you to see how I see this, right? So now there is a culture surrounding this stuff, and it's not. Let's be clear about that. For example, let's use jazz for an example. Today's jazz culture is not anything like the culture of the people that jazz came from. There was a time when jazz was the music of a people. But it has been developed over these years to stand on its own merits. That music now, when you play jazz, you're not necessarily playing the music of the culture from 100 years ago where the music came from. Because it's been developed as an art. And you can do this with anything, right? It's not just jazz. The same thing for classical. Even more so with the classical stuff. And so, yes, on the one hand, I'm always saying we don't want to be academic. But if it wasn't for people being academic in the first place, we wouldn't have jazz today, we wouldn't have classical stuff today. Because the culture has changed since then. The culture that created jazz, the culture that created classical music, those things are gone. And now we have these art forms that stand on their own. All right? So, now, why is it so important? Why is it so important that you be part of, if it's, you can see the contradiction, right? Why is it so important for you to be part of the jazz culture if that jazz culture is no longer directly connected to the original culture that jazz came from? Why is it still important? By the way, just because it's not directly connected doesn't mean you shouldn't learn all that stuff. I actually believe in learning all of that. Same thing with the classical stuff. But the culture is now independent. So why? Why should we do this? And the answer, as your teacher, there might be other more valid answers, but as your teacher, the answer is because you'll never replace the wisdom and knowledge that culture can offer you. You cannot get it from any other source other than that culture. What is culture? Culture is the accumulation of a people's knowledge and wisdom. And so, yes, food is going to come from that. Yes, music is going to come from that. Yes, language is going to come from that. But those things are not the essence of what the culture is. The lifeblood of those people is in that culture. I, as your teacher, could not possibly teach you enough to make up for the culture that you might be missing by not being part of those people. If you want to be a classical player and you're not part of the classical culture, no teacher in this world could possibly replace that. The wisdom and the knowledge you gain from that culture, no one teacher can possess. That's why it's important. No one teacher, no one book, no one method. When you are in the culture, there are things, and you don't even have to know you're learning them. There are things that are passed down to you. And you don't even know it's happening while it's happening. You don't even have to be cognizant of it while it's happening. Being part of the culture is how all of that wisdom and all of that knowledge is passed down to you. And that's why, if you want to destroy a people, you destroy their culture. It's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing. You know, I've been thinking about that. There have been times when I needed a role model and my father was already passed away. And I don't know what to do. And that's the role of the culture, is to help us make the right decisions in life. The culture gives us the knowledge and it gives us the wisdom. So when we apply that now to your trumpet playing, the culture helps you not have to reinvent the wheel. When we apply it to your jazz improv, the culture helps you not reinvent the wheel. Classical culture, the culture helps you not reinvent the wheel. You don't have to start from scratch. In fact, the worst thing in the world for anything like this is to start from scratch. If you're in the culture, this stuff is handed down, and it's handed down in a way that doesn't take nearly as much effort on your part. You just wake up one day thinking that's just how it was supposed to be. And you're shocked when other people don't do it that way. Right? That's what the culture is. That's why it's important. That's why why I talk about it so often. I hope that makes sense. So this is the introduction. I wanted to impress upon you why it's so important. Should I trill here or should I not trill here? Well, the culture will help you know that. Is this how it goes or is that how it goes? The culture will help you know that. If you're not part of the culture, and we'll talk in other videos about how to become part of the culture. And there's also one video I'm gonna have. This is one thing, because it sounds like I contradict myself often. I'd say on the one hand how important the culture is, and then I say on the other hand, this thing that they taught you is just cultural. Ignore that. Well, how can I say both of those? And we're gonna have a video just for that. I'm hoping, maybe it'll be the next video. I haven't planned all of the videos out. I'm going to make this a 5-video series to fit the weeks in the month of December. This is the introduction. I'm thinking the one about the contradiction might be in the next video, because I want it to be not too far from Thanksgiving, not too far from Christmas. So I think the next video will make it that one. And that way you can understand why I contradict myself in that way. Because yes, I think the culture is important, but there are things that are just cultural and you should ignore them. So I love this stuff, man. All right. So if you got any questions about this, about the importance of culture, ask below, or you can join us on the live stream Q and A that we have almost every Friday. During busy season, maybe not. And since I'm scheduling this in October. I'm actually recording it in August. My idea this year is to get all of my videos for the year scheduled so I can spend some time practicing for a change. So while you're watching this video, I'm probably practicing. So and composing and doing stuff that these videos have a tendency to get in the way of. Okay, so I'm getting them all done for the year, and so I can anyway. So this is being published in the first week of December. So the next few weeks, I don't know yet, but I might have a lot of gigs. So we might not have the Q and A every week, but we try to have at least, you know, when I'm not working, if I don't have a gig on Friday, we have the Q and A on Friday. That's how it works out. So join us there if you have any questions. Other than that, God bless you. We'll see you on the next video. Thank you.